welcome back to the BJJ101 STOREROOM podcast. We have a very, very special guest. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce your name 100%. Like, we always get confused at the gym, but Munkhsukh. Munkhsukh. Alright, there
Perfect.
we go. Yeah, Munkhsukh. Yeah, we always get, obviously for,
There's different versions of that floating around.
Floating around the gym, there's a lot of different variations, but I always try my best to get that right. We'll always start off with a fairly generic question about jiu-jitsu, but it's also just like an introduction of yourself. So just start to introduce yourself, and like in that introduction, just let us know kind of where you first were introduced to jiu-jitsu and that kind of part of your life and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So name is Munkhsukh.
Yeah.
Originally from Mongolia, born and raised there.
Yeah.
And I spent quite a bit of time in the States,
Yeah.
as you can tell from the accent sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I've been living in Australia for the last 5 years, almost 5 years.
Yeah.
Got 4 kids, 4 boys.
Yeah.
You guys know all of them.
Yeah, we know all of them. Yeah.
So, so I'm in the mining industry, and kind of, jiu-jitsu is something that I stumbled onto, and then, been crazy about it since I've discovered it.
Yeah.
How did you stumble?
Well, funny because the first time I actually saw jiu-jitsu was in San Francisco in 1995. There's 2 gyms.
Yeah.
One is a Muay Thai academy, and the other one is a Half Gracie academy.
I was going to say, because Half Gracie has been in San Francisco for a long time. I thought it would be Half Gracie.
So I looked at it, and I was looking for some sort of a martial art to do, and then I looked at it, and they were rolling around in the gi, and I was trying to figure it out, and it's like, okay, Muay Thai sounds a bit more interesting. So I ended up doing Muay Thai for a little bit, and never really tried jiu-jitsu until much later in life. So that's probably the only regret I have in life is
Not starting early enough.
not
That's
starting
everyone's
early
That's
enough
everyone's
with jiu-jitsu, because at that point nobody really knew what this 95 before UFC was big and everything. So
1 year after I was born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so I think about the possibilities. If I'd started then I think it would have been a really interesting journey. But that's pretty much the only regret I have. And then much later, about maybe 10 years ago, I used to kind of live back and forth between the States and Mongolia, and then I wanted to give jiu-jitsu a try, because I was actually watching some of the UFC fights and just always talk about jiu-jitsu, this and that, and so I decided to give it a shot. So I actually went to train with Caesar Gracie Academy in San Francisco as well, and then that kind of
That's the starting point.
Again, and then I was kind of living back and forth between the U.S. and Mongolia, and I was spending a lot of time in Mongolia, so I had to kind of create my own kind of jiu-jitsu community there, because
You wanted to keep training. There wasn't nothing there.
This was only 10 years ago.
How was the scene back then in Mongolia? So when you get to Mongolia, you had to let's get some people together here and teach them some, or they already got a few blue belts and purple belts there? What was the scene back then?
So I actually didn't know any of the jiu-jitsu people.
In Mongolia.
Okay. Then I kind of through word of mouth try to find who were the people, and there was an association, but there wasn't any particular gym. So all the guys that did jiu-jitsu actually would go from one gym to another, different judo academies and wrestling places and things like that. And so I actually got to know them. Most of them have some sort of judo or sambo background. Very high level athletes. But quite new to jiu-jitsu. And all of them are very in that competitive mind space, because they all have already gone into international kind of competitions.
Level with the other sport.
And even in jiu-jitsu at that point. So they were actually competing in blue and purple belt. And they had pretty long judo careers and all that. So that competitive scene wasn't new to them. So it was like a very new sport that they were getting used to.
Yeah.
And then then I started training with them and became friends. And then I wanted to have a consistent schedule in training. So I had a apartment that I had in Mongolia. I had a basement.
Yeah.
So I actually redid the basement to turn it into like a
matted area.
Matted area, and told my wife it was for the kids. And this is still part of the house, right? So then we'd go and train, and then a bunch of us get together, and 6, 7, dudes getting together, and then just gets the smell and everything is pretty
crazy.
Difficult. So after about a few months, my wife figured it out as like, this is not for the kids. You guys need to go and find your own place. So we got booted out of the basement, and then so we decided to start a gym, like dedicated jiu-jitsu gym. That was 6 years ago. It was over 6 years ago. So yeah, that was kind of...
That was like the beginning journey of everything. Yeah, all right, cool.
So now it's like the jiu-jitsu community is really thriving.
Yeah.
Very big, because there's already a very strong grappling culture.
Yes,
There's very natural, group of athletes that are coming over. Young people very interested, and so it's a pretty strong scene.
How did that go with starting the gym? Was there another guy there or a few guys there that were already of a higher belt level?
Yeah.
So how did that all
So, this was the guys that I was training with. Some of them had more experience than me and higher belt and obviously more competitive than I am in terms of so we so I just basically we set it up and created a company and set up a gym and funded it, and I can't manage on a day-to-day basis. I just want to a place to train.
You facilitated some funding.
A lot of jiu-jitsu gyms actually around the world that happen for the same reason.
Yeah.
Like there was a doctor or someone that just really loves jiu-jitsu, that want to keep training, and then they just help facilitate, the idea, and they have a bit of a business mindset, and they just help make it happen,
So the guys there that were of a high belt level and stuff, where were they training before when they were getting their belts and things like that? So you started at Cesar Grace, so they were just traveling and training everywhere, wherever they could.
So we didn't have any higher belts in Mongolia. We've never actually had any Brazilian coaches or anything like that.
So they would travel and get graded and things at other gyms and stuff like that. Okay.
And I think they gone through the kind of competed in white belt or blue belt and then smashing everybody, and it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. So they just actually put on some of them would put on a purple belt and just go at it, right? Because there's no professors or coaches, but then they can't fighting in the same kind of belt category. So I think there's that natural progression, and then so those guys we've put in some structure, and then we actually connected with some senior professors from Brazil, and then we actually connected with the UAJGF Federation. So we actually have now international referees and people who are actually IBJJF kind of accredited black belts and things like that. So we put all that structure in so that we didn't have to kind of we want to actually be a bit more organized. So now I guess we have, I think in total, so Mongolia, there's probably about close to 6 or 7 black belts. Probably about 15 brown belts.
How many academies in Mongolia at the moment?
I think there's probably dedicated jiu-jitsu academies are 6 or 7 of them. Of which 4 are actually part of
your organization
that kind of grew, right?
So that's interesting, and it's like a very quick progression in 5-6 years or whatever. Also just wanted to congratulate you on being named, is it the president of the Mongolian Jiu-Jitsu Association?
Yeah.
So that's a massive honor, and congratulations,
Thanks.
Yeah, congratulations too.
Congratulations, yeah, for all your hard work over the last 6 years and everything. And I always remember, I've actually Abu Dhabi. I went to Thailand one time for a UAE competition, where there's always like a big turnout of, like he's saying, like these blue, purple, very, very strong, high level competitive Mongolian guys and girls that go there, and they're competing regularly. Like they're going to not only the World Pro, they're going to smaller competitions and just always competing within Asia or whatever. So, and like he's saying also, probably the biggest attribute, not all of them, but a majority of them, one of the stronger areas is their stand-up. Like they're all, people when they start watching them standing up, everyone's like, oh man, like these guys have got power. They're very good with their takedowns and then waza and all the judo stuff. So it's always exciting to watch, you know what I mean? Because they don't care about anyone's reputation or whatever. They just want to go there and fight whoever they can as hard as they can. So it's really, really awesome to watch. And yeah, they're doing such a good job over there. You've been doing such a good job with, your gyms there and the organisation and everything. So.
Yeah,
to be fair though, I didn't do any of the work, so the other guys actually doing really the hard lifting. So we there's many things that are happening. So the gyms are actually doing okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why we set up the gyms is that look, we want to compete and we want to actually have, do really well in jiu-jitsu world competition scene.
Yeah.
But you got to make it sustainable because. Most likely, it requires international travel. You got to be almost a professional.
Yeah,
athlete.
there's a lot of funding that needs.
Yeah, so we said, look, okay, let's try to make this as commercial as possible. Make a steady income stream through the gym, and then we can actually support our athletes and coaches and things like that.
Yeah,
and it just grows bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So one of the key things that we initially said, look, we're gonna charge for jiu-jitsu. This is gonna actually. We're going to try to attract, and it's got to be a business, but it's not really to get rich, but it's to actually make things more sustainable.
Just to build and grow within itself. Yeah,
exactly.
And then, like, when we started first initially started charging for, like, judo, freestyle wrestling, all those martial arts in Mongolia, trainings for pretty much free, right?
Okay, I didn't know that.
So it's like a lot of, the Soviet bloc countries. I mean,
Japan was
country,
like that too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The country actually takes care of it, and then you have like Olympic.
That's right. Judo in Japan, it's funded by
that was a bit harder to start it because they're not used to have to pay for training.
Correct. So I remember them talking about that in Japan, the same type of idea, like because they have like within their high school program and all this stuff, judo's funded and whatever sports centers that they have around whatever city area and stuff. It's all free there if you just. A Japanese national when you want to go there and do a judo class, no dramas. Yeah.
Especially big Olympic sports, they get usually supported by the state countries, and then there's budget allocated. And so it's very unusual for people to see
this
a
place
gym
is
that's charging. It's like,
But if there's no support from the government, like BJJ, if you don't charge, you cannot fund people travel athletes to travel and compete.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And then, look, I think the big thing about it is it creates, so many opportunities for other people. So biggest issue is when you compete in those Olympic sports, you do well, and then you hit your mid-20s or, and when you retire from the competition scene, you don't know what to do.
Yeah, you don't have it. You've spent.
The only thing you know how to do it is to actually train or teach. Yeah.
So, and only like the very few superstars that have world championships and Olympic medals, they get taken care of. But then there's a whole bunch of people, there aren't only so many coaching jobs. So it's
they're not that 1%. Yeah.
So I think with jiu-jitsu, what we can do is look and say, okay, this is actually something that's a bit more sustainable, more open to general public. You can be a 50-year-old person, trying it for the first time.
Starting at 50,
Yeah, and like you don't have to have the aspiration to be an Olympic champion to actually do. So I think that's a very different mindset that is quite new.
Yeah.
Probably it's not so new in the US or Australia and other places, but in a lot of countries it's actually a new concept, and I think it creates
To do
more
these
career
competitive
opportunities.
sports
Yeah.
for fun instead of like
Yeah.
career.
I think in Australia was something that's been changing in the last 10 years because I remember only to reinforce what you're saying, only 3% of all the practitioners of BJJ in the world compete, or ever competed. So there's 97% that don't compete.
Are just your regular students.
Just people that like for lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think in Australia, I remember when I was started to teaching, and a lot of people go, "Oh, I can't train because I'm already 30." Like, you know what I mean? Like, or I don't want to get like kicked. And I was like, "There's not even a kick," you know? Like,
Yeah.
so I think this perception that like you can be any age and you can have jiu-jitsu like that can cater pretty much for yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I think this before was like the only vision that people had of martial arts. I'm gonna be a fighter. I'm doing this to fight, and now people are doing this to feel good, like to have a good life, like a balanced lifestyle thing.
To stay fit, to be healthy.
To be healthy. Yeah.
I think that's changed with a lot of martial arts. I don't know, culturally in Mongolia, I think might be even more serious. You know what I mean? But even like things that have been in Australia for a long time, for example, like boxing or kickboxing, like martial arts before was never done as like a hobby. These people were doing it for real. Anybody that did martial arts 10, 15, 20 years ago, you were there to be a world champion, or you were just a thug. But you didn't. Yeah, correct. You just wanted to bash people, but like nobody went and chose and did martial arts because it was like fun and exciting and
or mental evolution for yourself.
People 20 years ago, the reason they did martial arts was to be a world champion in whatever they picked, or because they were a rough guy and they used to bash people and they're like, I need to get good at bashing people so I don't get bashed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it used to be.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of not just in the jiu-jitsu or grappling scene, but like in the striking scene.
Yeah.
Only like 5-6 years ago, you'd go and try to find a boxing gym. Olympic boxing is a bit different. It's very well established. But if you wanted to get into like kickboxing or Muay Thai or mixed martial arts, the places that you'd go there, it's kind of a scary place.
Yeah.
True.
You don't go in there to become a beginner. Kind of a.
There's so many crazy stories. But I remember when, and this is not long ago. I remember when I was at boarding school in Toowoomba, Queensland. This is not long ago. And one of the kids going there from the boarding school to try an MMA class in one of the gyms there. And I remember him like, oh yeah, no, I'm going there. Blah, blah, blah. And when he came back, man, he had 2 black eyes, his nose was bleeding everywhere. And I'm like, man, what happened to you, dude? He's 16 or 17. Oh yeah, they put me to spar with this guy, this like adult guy, and the guy just bashed him. And I'm like, man, this is wrong.
Yeah.
This can't be happening. But that's the type of people that were going and doing that. And this is not long ago. I mean, this is what, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever. Yeah. Crazy beginnings.
But it hasn't been that long.
No,
it's just changing so fast.
Changing so fast lately.
Everywhere.
True.
Jiu-jitsu was the same. I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu when I was 14, and there was no kids class. It didn't exist. I was lucky I was big for a kid. I was already 80 kilos or whatever. It's similar to one of your sons, Garrett. He's a big guy and he's coming and training with the adults and stuff already, but I remember starting, there was no kids guard, there was no progression. All right, you're 14, you want to train? No problem, you train with them. And this is all grown men, you know what I mean? I think that's one of the reasons I actually got good at jiu-jitsu, because I actually started not knowing anything and I'm doing jiu-jitsu with guys way bigger and stronger than me. So I actually think I got more technical by default, just because that's the only way to get by. But yeah, it's interesting to think about.
I always, through the entire time, I always ask when people come to the gym, first time they're signing up, like to try for a trial, I always ask, what makes you start? And these answers change according to the time. Before, right at the beginning, I want to learn how to fight. I'm like, here we go, this type again, But it used to be this a lot.
Yeah.
Or I want to protect myself, or I want to go out, or that happened a lot here. Or I went to the valley and got bashed last week, and they already got bashed.
I'm getting tired of it.
It's like, now I want to learn how to protect myself. And then it changed, and then probably a year ago or 2 years ago used to be Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was like 80% of like the podcast, the famous podcast American guy that trains jiu-jitsu and talks, highly of jiu-jitsu and basically everything he actually says about jiu-jitsu is, I believe, I lived through these as well, the benefits that he was, but he has a big audience, so brought a lot of people. But I think now it's even on the next level now, which is like, it's so popular that people are coming like, my doctor told that it's good for my child, or my auntie is taking my son, so I'm taking as well. Like, it's just like, they don't even know what they're doing, but they bring it because someone said it's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, lots of celebrities, lots of people. Everyone's doing jiu-jitsu. It's become, I think it's like similar to like CrossFit. It's popular right now. Like CrossFit,
buzzing.
It's buzzing, and the UFC is getting bigger, and there's lots of fights and things, and it just keeps.
What should I bring? I don't need to bring too much. Munkhsukh, I wanted to ask you a question as well. You had 3 boys that trained with us, and we saw the whole all the transformation. And in your opinion, why jiu-jitsu is good for kids? Like you had different boys, different ages. They all had their challenges. They all made probably they benefited in some way of jiu-jitsu for a different reason. So by having this pool of like 3 kids doing it, what is in your opinion? Why you think jiu-jitsu is a great sport / martial arts for kids?
Yeah, look, I think, so we actually had to make some of the kids go, right? So it wasn't like they were all committed.
Yeah.
So like, and I used to tell them like, I can't believe you like having me tell you to go to jiu-jitsu. Like, if I had a dad like me when I was a kid, that would have been awesome, right? But anyway, look, I think
you just said they had to go and they went.
Yeah.
My mom bribed us. We train, we get ice cream. We don't train, no ice cream.
Well, whatever it takes. But I think that consistency is very important, right?
Yeah.
Because whatever you do, it could be rugby, swimming, or anything. But the fact that you actually stay committed and you stick with something for a long period of time, that's very important. Because, I see a lot of times like, you try football here for a couple of weeks and then you don't like it and then they gotta go. And so I think kids go through and adults go through that as well, is that it kind of teaches you that perseverance and you get to, watch the benefit of sticking with something for a longer period of time. And I think it's just, in this day and age, you got so many choices to make. So you try one activity, you don't like it, you jump onto the next thing, but you never really
get good at anything or improve or evolve.
So I think that's one of the key things that we've got out of it as a family, is that we just stuck with something for quite some time, and there were times where kids, I'm sure they wanted to quit many times and such. And then of course the other, many different benefits, physically, I think they're more capable, more confident in their abilities. I think the social value, the social interaction value has been really, really good. You recall what Garrett used to be like when he was younger, right? He couldn't focus on anything, all over the shop and everything. And Morgan had challenges as well, so kids actually go through that transformation. Having your parents and then your coaches and then this kind of community that you interact with, it is actually very helpful in shaping the young person. Yeah,
their character and then building something that we started to do a lot more and talking about is just like morals and like like ethics of being a decent person and stuff like that. But I think there's like so many different reasons, but I think one of the main reasons that becomes it's ingrained into the individual, like a youth individual in martial arts, is because you're surrounded by older
role models,
and you're
in a healthy environment.
In a healthy environment that's not like
treated as a grown
an
up,
equal, as an equal,
exactly.
With them,
There's no babysitting.
Yep.
And which I think is missing from like everything else social. Like there's no other place where you can go that I can think of in my mind right now. Like where else do you receive that?
Yeah.
You know, you used to have that type of interaction. Day to day when we were living in villages and things like that, and that's you would interact with everybody all the time like that. But now, as we get more westernized and everyone has their own big house, and you go there and mum and dad goes to work and does all this stuff, and you're kind of left on your own.
More important than ever.
And you just don't have that that interaction with somebody of a role model that's in older position, and they've experienced these things in life and blah blah, and you just don't get it anymore. So I think it's a massive point.
On that point, I mean, just as you were saying, you were 14 when you started training with adults, right? So you're absolutely right. You don't get that interaction as a teenager to interact closely with adults on a peer-to-peer level. Right? So it's either your teacher, your coaches, or your parents. So it's always a figure of authority. So you don't really know how to navigate and have that relationship. And then so either you are, compliant, or you're rebelling against it. So it's always that structure. But when you actually bring in a 14-year-old and start training with adults, and then, they see the impact, the interaction, the respect that they're getting, and that you actually have to give respect to actually receive it as well. So I think that comfort level, especially with our second born with Garrett, is hugely important for him to start training with adults, because he didn't know how to talk with adults at all. He's just now he's got 30-some-year-old friends that he just hangs out in the gym with.
Come on the weekend, we can do that.
And it just made him very comfortable around adults and just having that adult level interaction with people, right?
Garrett, for me, like your son, for me, it was my whole coach life. I always aim for that moment, right? And I used to say that, where you get a child and you go and you teach them, and he sticks around. For that to happen, he needs to stick around, and the transformation helps, the floor, the people around, etc., the values, their training, their improvement as a person happens, and suddenly they go to the adults. That for me is the full cycle, and he's going to be greater as an adult with their adults, and that is for me the full cycle happening. He's going to be the first full cycle happening, and the beauty of the full cycle happening is that he's then graded as an adult. He's an adult then, and his dad is an adult training with him. That's a bit like an ice on the cake for me, as a coach.
It's got to be one of those also very, great satisfying experiences to watch your
amazing
students grow from
amazing. And you had a finger on the pie. Exactly. To make that a better.
Continuing to evolve and get better and improve in all aspects of life.
I guess those would be the benefits with kids. And look, I think I think coaches really have an important aspect, especially if you've seen them 3 times a week and over year, and it's very very influential.
Bring them upstairs for a chat.
For sure. There's always bumps in the road. You got to talk to each other. But we've encouraged people before, talking about this type of stuff on some other podcasts. Man, you should go and find somewhere that you're comfortable. If you talking about these other gyms that we said 10 minutes ago, if that was your experience, go and find somewhere else. Go and train there. Go and find a gym that you're comfortable with, you're happy with. You're happy with the instructors. You're happy to leave your kids there with them. Because it doesn't matter where you go really. If the person's generally decent, you're going to have a lot of benefit from training jiu-jitsu, whether it's evolving your character, because there's so many problems that come up that you have to figure out to solve, whether it's a kids class or adults class. There's disputes all the time, and you got to figure that out. They got to figure that out, and they got to figure out how to deal with other children, and later on adults and everything as well. But it's interesting to watch everybody. We've talked about this so many times, but it's beautiful to watch people, their starting point of jiu-jitsu, and then just how they evolve as an individual, child, adult, anybody. You're forced to, you know what I mean? This is the thing. This is why it's so uncomfortable and hard to start to begin with, though, because you're throwing yourself into challenge and you're forced to evolve and reinvent yourself and improve and address the flaws that you're noticing, and like whether it's emotional or technical or whatever. Like there's going to be times where you get pissed off and you don't want to come to training, or you get angry because you get submitted, or you feel sad and depressed because you got submitted 2 times, whatever. And you have to learn how to address those things so you can, like you said, persevere and be disciplined enough to train for 10 years or 20 years or whatever, or the rest of your life. You know what I mean? So super interesting.
Munkhsukh, I heard about another person that trains here. You consider a legend in your industry. A legend for people that don't know, a legend in Australia, it's someone that people look up to, someone that people think it's really good to work with. It's someone that people is highly respected. So it's a very good quality to be called that here. And so I would like to make a parallel with business and jiu-jitsu. So what are the things that you can bring from jiu-jitsu to business? For example, I read once that a lot of companies have a big problem where people pretend, the old generation, new generation, they pretend they know things, so they don't want to look bad, with that team. So everyone's pretending they know, rather than go and like what we do in jiu-jitsu, like, oh, look, I don't know that, you mind showing me this, and try to exchange, understanding that everyone, it's for the well-being of the company and the culture.
The benefit of everyone, yeah.
Benefit of the company and everyone else, and yourself as a person, and the team. So what are the aspects of jiu-jitsu that you can take to the corporate level that you think it's very beneficial,
Yeah. Let me just correct something. I'm very far away from being a legend, but I appreciate that people are saying that about me. So that's
well, you're a legend on the mat. I know that you're a legend on the mat. You're great training, good person to be around. So you're a legend on the mat.
Well, look, I think career-wise, I've been pretty lucky. I've been given some opportunities, and I've had good, guidances from other people. So. I do have a senior role in the company that I work with, and probably deal with pretty high level issues. So I'm one of the senior leaders in my company, but that's not same as being a legend. So anyway, I think when it comes to jiu-jitsu, there's lots of analogies and similarities that I notice, right? And in terms of this is what works in jiu-jitsu, and then this is how it works in business, and these two are very similar. For example, I guess one of the things in jiu-jitsu, for example, that I've been recently practicing is, like, for example, when you go after submission, just be very patient and just get everything lined up, and then when that timing and when the leverage, grip, everything is set up, then you kind of go for it, and
you pull the trigger on that scenario. Yeah.
Whereas, like, when you're desperate hunting for a submission, and you got your body isn't in the right place, and everything's wrong, but you're still trying to finish something. So just being patient with the setup and the timing and things like that. In business, for example, with opportunities, like, when you have the right opportunity and it's ready to go, and you kind of build things up. You have your support network, you got your partner, and you got your investment, and then you have market timing, the conditions are right, and you just kind of, you kind of know when it's the right moment to move or make a decision or do something. So things like that I noticed that are a lot of similarities and parallels that I can draw, probably infinite. But in terms of actually, taking something that I've learned from jiu-jitsu and actually applying in the business community, and this is actually that I think about a bit, is like I negotiate for a living, right? And it, you know, there's many different ways of doing it. So you can actually, you know, go for the most out of that interaction negotiation and really try to win, you know, at all costs, right? And that's not always necessarily a good thing, because especially if you're going to run into that person again, if you actually going to, you know, partner up on many things in the future. So the way I think about it is, you know, I used to think about work as a kind of like almost like a competition, like a battle, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really wrong way to actually think about things.
More of like a short-term mindset.
Yeah, because then okay, you must conquer that person. So my strategy, the way I deal with that problem, the way I deal with that person is, all right, I'm going to go for the kill, negotiate, win, and all of that. And I think that is a very unhelpful kind of mindset in the business world. It's more around like the mindset that we have when we train jiu-jitsu, right? Because we actually, you know, friends, and we actually train to actually, you know, make each other better.
Yeah,
in the business community, when you build relationships and when you work with partners, you don't want to screw them over every chance you get. You actually want to help them. You want them to help you, and then so you can actually do more. So that mindset from kind of going into from combative, you know, zero-sum mindset into, okay, this is, you know, my work is actually the type of mindset that I should have, you know, on the mat with training, because, you know, we train together for years and years together, and we don't want to injure each other.
Yeah, we don't want to hurt each other. You can't train
support
anymore.
each
You're
other.
be pissed off with each other.
Yeah, even in the competition scene, it's different. It's not like a life and death type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that mindset is something that helped me. I don't know if it resonates with you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for so many scenarios, and it's not even like business. It's just relationships in general. Like, you know what I mean? Like, getting your way or the thing you want is not always. It doesn't have to be done in an aggressive way where you're dominating or like, you know, taking control of the scenario. There's always ways that you can work things out and meet in the middle with people, and everyone can have, you know, a situation where they're comfortable and happy with. And I think like that's something that I've definitely kind of started to think about more. Same with me, like as the more you learn and the more you kind of go through learning jiu-jitsu and understanding things. And man, I used to train too hard when I first started. You know what I mean? I came from a competitive rugby background, and there's a lot of guys that you see come into the gym like that. They want to, you know, train to the death, and they're trying to bash everyone. And I probably started a little bit more like that, especially starting where I started with jiu-jitsu when I was 14, you know, competing against these grown men that are, you know, the guys that I started training with, they weren't there to, you know, get good at this or that. Like, man, most of them fought MMA or they did kickboxing, and they wanted to, like, they started watching the UFC and the Ultimate Fighter, and yeah, it's just interesting. But also particularly to do with just like personal relationships, family relationships, same type of thing. Like, you do have to kind of soften at some point, and like you got to notice at some point it's about the big picture and not about right now, today, all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
I call that like fair play. So we have friendships here. We're training with each other all the time. Like, I'm not going to. It's not at any cost that we're gonna aim for the submission. If I can feel that this is not gonna be too much or this is gonna be hurt, you know, I'm not gonna go for that. You know, like that's the more important thing. You know, like it's worth more. You know.
Yeah, and
so I think that vision is very important.
You can translate that to like what Munksukh's saying with just dealing with people. You know what I mean? Instead of arguing like there's people being upset with you about something to do with the gym, you just go, you know what, it's okay, alright, no problem. If that's what you want to do, you do that. And then you just kind of continue doing what you're doing. And, yeah.
I have a question for you as well. Like, because I know you lived in America, Mongolia, and Australia now. I made this my personal parallel. I used to think about the difference between jiu-jitsu in Australia and in Brazil. Do you have, if you reflect a little bit, like, what are the differences between Mongolian, US, and Australia in terms of jiu-jitsu? Like anything you noticed, you know, that was very that came
Do you think there was anything to do with the culture that kind of led to like a difference in, you know, the jiu-jitsu or how people kind of approach it and stuff like that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I mean there's definitely very strong difference between Mongolia versus, let's say, other countries, because Mongolia's got a very strong grappling culture.
Yeah.
So for us, for example, wrestling and just kind of that's like same thing as playing football or
AFL, rugby, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, just it's something that you do as a kid on the street all the time, right? So it's like you play
Just wrestle people.
yeah, wrestle people, and like, you know, let's say we were having barbecue and our kids, and then two dads get together and get their sons and start wrestling them, and then whenever we get drunk, we start wrestling each other. That's pretty much it's such a big part of our culture, and then we have a very high level judo, sambo, freestyle wrestling. So all the Olympic sports where we get medals, it's all combat sports. So it's boxing, you know, wrestling and all those things. And like judo wise, Mongolia is actually, you know, one of the top 5 teams in the world.
Yeah.
Period. Right.
Yeah.
For a country of that size. So I think that culture has kind of translated into jiu-jitsu a bit.
Yeah.
So, you know, you go into Mongolia, everybody's usually, you know, that would train jiu-jitsu as a black belt in judo, right?
Yeah,
and, you know, we are getting new people who are 100% jiu-jitsu, and their game is very different. They're actually doing more guard plays and things like that. Whereas, but that culture, what it's actually ended up translating in Mongolia is it's very physical, right? The guys are very fit. They have a lot of drive and energy.
More battle.
Yeah. So a lot of
competition
grinding,
training.
Yeah, that type of training. So, like I get just like I show up for one of those trainings, and you know, nowadays it takes me a few days to recover
afterwards. Yeah.
So and then the guys take it easy on me nowadays, but it's still very very physical and just a lot of grind into it. Whereas other places, I think things are a bit different. So, like the training is usually 2 hours and over, and then so that physical element is actually quite significant in Mongolia. I think in Australia, I mean, I haven't been around too many of the gyms, but as I travel, I think Australia is a bit similar. There's also a harder drive, and I feel, you know, guys are a bit bigger, and then there's a lot of people who have rugby type of background.
Yeah, true.
So a lot of pressure and things like that you know comes in Australia, and whereas so if I go to Korea or Japan, very different game and very, you know, even the teaching methodology, it's a lot of finessing, a lot of detail,
systematic kind of approach to like this thing, next step.
A lot more technical, less brute force. As well.
Brute force, less physicality. And but then, you know, like sometimes, and I get frustrated when I travel, and I just like, can we just get this over with and just show me what are you trying to get to, and then I'll work backwards. Whereas they actually build in a lot of these techniques one by one. So, I mean, there's pros and cons, but I feel like there's that cultural element, and how the sport has evolved. It ends up actually having an impact on how it gets practiced in that community.
I agree.
And you gotta like compensate for what you don't have, and then, you know, strengthen what you already have. So, but I've had, you know, I guess one part of my, you know, job that's really great is that I get to travel, and whenever I travel, just take my gi and go to different places and train. So, but I think in the last 5 years, the level of jiu-jitsu has just gotten so good everywhere. Any major city you go to, you know, you spend 10-15 minutes researching up which gyms to go, And
yeah, there will be like a world-class level guy at, you know, every major city, at least a couple of the gyms, there'll be one or two guys that are world-class, you know what I mean, there.
And I've never really had a bad experience visiting any other gyms. It's always been very positive, pros and cons, and then some gyms, you know that they're like really good, right? Yeah. And they're very serious, and then some gyms are, you know, a little less serious and things like that. So it depends on, you know,
so many different
how
factors,
big the city is, how competitive the scene is, and there's different things. And you know, I think it's like you got to find the right gym that actually is not too competitive for somebody like me.
For what you're looking for,
yeah. You got to find the gym to suit you, for sure.
Yeah, just make friends, and you know, that experience is more important than, you know. Yeah.
One thing that I travel to many different places, and I take my gi, and I always found super awesome that you get to a place and you train with people, and then, for example, you go, hey, can you make some friends there super quick, and you say, look, can you give me a couple of restaurants, or, you know, like where the locals go. Yeah. And that was so precious for me, because I got a lot of the best tips out of these guys, you know. And sometimes they go, oh no, let's go to my house, we're doing a Brazilian barbecue, and you know, Saturday, you know. So you get to have this interaction as well, isn't it? That's the good thing.
You gotta, like, because when you do jiu-jitsu and whenever you go to a new place, you have like almost instant group of friends.
Yeah, an instant network.
Network, because you show up to a gym, you have a good roll, and then you sit down, and everybody's like, where are you from?
What do you do? What's up?
And then, okay, let's connect on Facebook and things like that. And then, you know, and then you can actually have a, you know, chat, dinner, coffee, or whatever. And then if you're going to spend a bit more time, you actually develop that friendship with people. And I think that's like one of the great things. So if you know, our young people travel, that's one of the biggest great, you know, advantages. It's like this global, you know, brotherhood, you know, friend
community,
network.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. And this thing is very interesting about this super quick bond. I remember when I was teaching the Australian Army, the major there, they brought the jiu-jitsu to like improve the resilience, you know. And he said one of the most amazing things, that was his testimonial for me one day, he said, one of the most amazing things that I see in jiu-jitsu, because when we get a new intake for our troop, it would take normally like 3 to 6 months for them to really bond. And with the jiu-jitsu classes, that was happening like in a couple of weeks. And I think like when you give like someone can submit you, you know what I mean? Like someone can choke you unconscious, like you kind of give each other's like look after your life, you know?
Yeah.
So the bond is like tremendous out of that because they give you great restaurants.
That's right. That's exactly what Octavio talked about, how it's like your first way of communicating is actually through touch and feel and grappling. Like when you're a baby, you don't even have the ability to vocalize anything yet. So that the form of communication is the most primal, basic ability you have, and when you exchange that with somebody else, we talk a little bit about this with Paul White as well, and having fun or whatever, but Octavio explained it a little more detailed, and it's like this anthropological kind of like basic level of connecting with somebody else and communicating. That's like the most primal way to communicate with another human being is through touch and feel and grappling and wrestling.
It's so interesting.
Super deep.
There was like a funny story like that it happened to you on one of these trips, that like you went visit a gym. That we always have
There's always some crazy stuff that happens there.
Like
so this happened when I was white belt. So I went to visit a gym. This is another gym, and I was still trying to figure out. Like I had only like 1 or 2 things.
Whereabouts? What country?
In the US.
US.
So I went to another gym and was traveling, just like trying to figure out. And I think I had like 1 or 2 things. So there's this. You know,
try to figure out. Like, you know it's gonna come a big thing, right?
Well, look, I just like. And there was a purple belt, and he's pretty strong. He's like, you know, buff, and then like dragged him on the collar and jumped, and then like, you know, climbed around him, and then, you he went to turtle and then just like yanked his arm out and then, pulled him into an arm bar. So I mean, he didn't really expect. So he's just like some white belt, and he's just kind of like want to like fill it out and things like that. But it's just like I surprised him and just pulled it in there. And then his professor was actually on the other side and kind of watching, and he was just like laughing.
Yeah.
And then I think the guy just, I mean, I didn't have a lot of sparring experience, and it's just like one thing I knew is just like panic and spasm and just
doing
done it. And I think it pulled it pretty hard. And then just like for that, it was like a 10-minute, and it's just probably I submitted it 40 times or something like that. The guy's just like, and it wasn't mean, but it's just wanted to make sure that So it's like one of the really kind of ways I learned is just like. And it happened luckily, very early. It's just like, all right, I got to watch my manners when I visit.
Don't go too crazy with
Don't
someone.
go too crazy. Yeah. So that's probably the thing that I would be embarrassed about.
Just going there and bashing some big purple belt.
Big purple belt. And I'm sure he was very good, obviously. But the funny is just that the professor is sitting there, he's just kind of chuckling. And I'm sure that fired him up. And he was just like, all right.
And then he went serious with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever, for example, have you ever visited a gym where they had a certain police or something that you go like, wow, I never seen this before?
Not really?
No, not really.
Or something completely unique there you go, wow. I remember one time I was in China in this industrial city, and I found jiu-jitsu, and it starts at 9 p.m. And I'm already been to factories, and I'm tired, but like, man, super keen because there's nothing to do. Horrible city in terms of nothing to do. So I was like holding my dinner, because if you have dinner and go train, it'd be terrible.
Yeah, it would be terrible.
Arrived there, and there was this Brazilian Japanese guy teaching very good jiu-jitsu, amazing people, great training, but at the end, this is a true story. He stayed, I'm not joking, 5 minutes, like people line up, and he goes, a little bit more here. You will come back. Like if he was trying to make a picture, everyone line, you come back this way. And I'm like, oh my God. This
is for the lineup.
Yeah.
He wasn't even taking a picture.
No, he was just positioning everyone properly.
Just everyone, like this was hurting him. And I'm like, oh, how long was this going? It's like 10:30 at night, I'm like, man.
Very particular.
Funny stuff. You're always gonna find some crazy stuff and some crazy people. I think jiu-jitsu is such a unique kind of sport, and it invites like everybody from every kind of avenue of life. You know what I mean?
Did you have a funny one?
It's so inclusive. I don't think I have too many funny ones. All the travel I've done has always been for serious training.
You had a funny one. When I was with you in Japan, you had that American guy that got a bit upset. Made a scene.
I don't know. What happened? I think. I didn't try. I wouldn't let him triangle me. I don't know. I can't remember.
No, I think you submitted him. He got pretty upset. And they're not even going high because you have a competition next day. And
I think a lot of people, just because they see me physically, they're just like, oh man, the guy's strong. And I try not to use too much strength in rolls in general. Like I can use strength if I wanted, but I try to be fairly polite, you know what I mean? Unless somebody else like goes super hard with me, I'm just going to match the intensity of the roll.
It can be hard. I mean, it's always hard when you in that gym, you are like the best of that gym, like you're doing really well, and then someone arrives and then that guy like makes you don't look like, it's always like a ego thing, you know what I mean?
I think probably one of like the funnier things that has happened is I remember going to Abu Dhabi as a black belt, and then like in the training room everyone just comes down out of their rooms and they do open mats in the kind of like in the like conference room areas and stuff there with all the matted space. And I remember training with the guy I was going to fight the next day, and he didn't even know. You know what I mean? And then and he did okay, did some sweeps and stuff training, and then I submitted him the next day. But I don't think he wanted to train, but he didn't even recognize it. It was funny. It was funny.
Well, I think there's some like nuances. I mean, I feel like leg locks is the area where every gym is different. Like you go to some gyms, everybody's just doing whatever
they want.
A lot of leg locks, and some places are very funny about that too. It's like no leg locks altogether. And And then the other thing that one thing that we do really well here that I really like is that we manage distances very well.
Yeah.
And that we
control the space.
Yeah, control the space and make it safe. Because I've seen
but
so
that took
many.
years,
There's some places, and this is very much in Mongolia, many gyms.
Yeah.
And just rolling all over each other. There's 4 or 5 people bunched into one.
Getting heel kicked and elbowed.
And then everybody just pushes it off, and then we move on. And it's pretty crazy. And the biggest thing is you're posting your hand and
elbow,
somebody actually rolling over.
Or on your fingers.
And legs as well. People do leg like this, bang.
Yeah. But those types of things were kind of, unusual. And especially when you're traveling, you don't want to get injured.
Yeah.
So, you get roll into somebody, and then our habit here is we stop and we move over. So I stop, and then I get immediately past or something, right?
Yeah.
But that's good fun.
Actually, I do have one funny one. When I went to Japan, myself and another athlete from Melbourne, I remember Googling the time for a class on one of the gyms. It was the closest gym, so we could go and eat after, or we had to weigh in or something. So I wanted to go there, sweat a bit, and go weigh in. We turn up to this gym, and it's empty. There's nobody in there. Not one person. They're knocking on the door everywhere. We're looking. It's open. It's completely open. There's no instructor. There's no nothing. But it's scheduled for a class, and it's open. The lights are on. Whatever. So we're just oh well. I don't know. What do we do? Can we train here? Whatever. Anyway, we just decided we're going to train there. So we trained there for an hour. Spar for an hour, boom, 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 whatever, and there's still no one there. We're looking around, whatever. All right, I don't know what to do. What do we do? All right, get the mat fee or whatever on the website. Yeah, no problem. All right, and then just put it on the table and go. But that's one of the weirder ones in Japan. There was nobody there. It's on the timetable. Everything's open. The lights are on. The doors are unlocked.
It's a super efficient business.
There's no instructor. Nothing. Just pay your mat fee and go. But that was a funny one. We were just what's going on? I have no idea. Yeah, and we just trained there for an hour and left. Yeah,
it's a good one.
Yeah. Anything else you want to mention?
Well, no, I was just personally, I think it was great to have you here today. It was awesome to get to know a little bit about yourself, and it's been always a pleasure to have you here. I think you're a great asset for our academy, honestly. Always polite, hard worker, team player, but great person to be around. Your kids are not different. The people cannot stop talking about Gary, how good he's getting right now. So when everyone's talking about it, that's a great sign in jiu-jitsu. Because he's getting much better. Yeah. So it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for giving the time for ourselves. And looking forward to see you on the mat. Congratulations again. I'm super proud of you, and I think the Mongolian Federation had a great choice of getting you. Good for them.
Good job. And our Mongolian team here is building all the time.
And our Mongolian team here is getting stronger.
We're taking over.
We're taking over, Mike.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thanks so much for being a part. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, look, it's always a pleasure, and we've been very honored and thankful to be part of this community as well. So
thank you, man.
We get so much out of it as a family as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad everyone's happy.
Yeah.